Welcome, everyone. I am Allison Robinson, and I am the founder and CEO of the Mom Project. As we continue with our Mother's Monday event today, I am so excited and honored to welcome and have the opportunity to speak with the amazing Marie Kondo, along with her interpreter, Marie Ida. Marie, welcome. It's such a pleasure having you here with us today. To our guests watching, I'm sure you know, because Marie is a household name, she's an organizing consultant, TV personality, and author of 11 books, with 10 books published in Japan and 7 books published here in the US. Her books have been translated into 44 languages, and she has sold more than 14 million copies worldwide. Marie has a hit Netflix show that I highly recommend, Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, and she is listed as one of Time Magazine's most influential people in 2015. And of course, most importantly, Marie is an absolute supermom to 3 beautiful children, 2 daughters, and your son, who you welcomed in 2021. Well, Marie, I am just so excited to have this opportunity to speak with you today. You are such an inspiration to me, and I know so many other moms joining us today in our community. So thank you for waking up so early in Japan to spend this special Mother's Monday with members of the Mom Project community.
マリエさん、今日は本当にお越しいただけて、光栄です。朝早いところから。私たちにとって、本当にそして今日、ここにいるママさんたちのコミュニティにとって、マリエさんは、インスピレーションとなる存在ですので、ありがとうございます。
はい、こちらこそ、今日は皆さんにと、お会いできる、アリソンさんともお会いできて、とても嬉しく思っています。
The pleasure's all mine. It's such an honor and a joy for me today to meet with you, Allison, and all the mothers in your community.
Thank you so much. We'd love to jump right in, if that's okay. Marie, really so curious to hear more about your journey, your discovery, and where you find your joy. So I'd love to start with a question of where did your journey begin, Marie? Your journey that led to helping so many others around the world find their joy through tidying and organization.
で、私がまずは片付けに興味を持ち始めたのはすごく小さい頃。
So my interest in tidying began when I was a very young girl. In fact, I was only 5 years old when I started flipping through my mother's monthly subscription magazines. They were lifestyle magazines, and I would pore over the tips on tidying and actually implement them myself. So as my interest in tidying increased, I began to ask myself, well, tidying is one thing, but how do you keep an organized, tidy space? And once you've cleaned and established a space, how do you keep it that way? And I gradually came up with a method that would eventually become my method of tidying. And the fundamental aspect that helped me conceive of those methods was the idea of choosing what sparks joy for you.
It's amazing.
So as my main interest was in tidying, I naturally started helping tidying friends' spaces and friends' apartments and so on. And naturally, I began to impart advice to friends and family and so on. And I would get requests from a lot of people to teach them how to tidy and organize. So this sort of paved the way for me to become a professional organizing tidying consultant. And as I was researching the best way to tidy and so on, and this was back in my student days, and while I was being obsessed with tidying, I kind of became consumed with the idea that tidying meant letting go of as much things as possible from your life. And I became consumed by the idea of throwing out as much as possible. And this process became quite stressful to me. And I began to gradually realize that tidying was not a process that was making me happy. And in one incident, one day, it became so stressful that I actually passed out in my room while I was tidying.
Wow.
片付けっていうのは、
And when I eventually came to, I realized that the way I was thinking about tidying was entirely wrong. There was a huge shift in the way that I approached things and I thought about tidying is that how you're supposed to approach this was not in looking for things that you wanted to let go or throw out, but you wanted to choose what you wanted to retain in your life, what makes you happy in your life. And thinking about it this way allowed me to approach tidying in a much more positive way and actually enjoy the process.
That's amazing, that story. It really hits home. Marie, thank you for sharing it with us. And, it's just, I can picture you as a 5-year-old girl flipping through your mother's magazines and to see that what you've done to take this idea and this passion that you had to build a global company that has impacted the way that so many people across the globe live is just so remarkable. So congrats to you on your journey as a female entrepreneur. You're, to me, just such an inspiration of what it can mean when you have such a passion and conviction and you're willing to work really hard to make that a reality. Just really inspiring. Great. So my next question, our community at the Mom Project is made up of more than 1 million moms and also dads and allies, and all trying to juggle and find work-life integration, balance in their day-to-day lives, which we know can be really, really hard. Many of us are getting pulled in many different directions and just trying our best to sometimes get through the day. I know balance has changed for you, Marie, since becoming a parent, especially now that you have 3 children, which certainly I can relate to as a proud mom of 3 myself. Could you tell us a little bit more about your approach to balance has changed and maybe how it's created new joy for you?
はい、もう本当におっしゃる通りで、
It's exactly as you say. As I became a mom of 3 children, the way I spend my time has completely just changed. Of course, from the time I was single, way before I was married and was a mom, I loved devoting myself to work, and my work in tidying was very meaningful to me, and that was how I spent most of my time. But once I became a mother, of course, the time I could spend for myself decreased significantly.
一番もうシンプルな
So, of course, I had to recalibrate how I spend time at work, but just simple things that I used to do naturally became very difficult after I became a mom. The fundamentals, really, simple things like putting things back after you use them became enormously difficult to do. And so, of course, this made me realize that, I really need to think about how I spend my time. And not only that, but how I feel about things, my emotions, and how I think about things. And I really, really needed to think about my approach to balance, as you say.
子供と楽しく過ごす時間、遊びをしたり
So this led me to really ask myself what's important to me right now. And I knew that the time I spend with my children, either playing or napping or cuddling, that was important to me. And of course, taking the time to maintain the well-being of my family and myself. And thirdly, my work. I had these 3 priorities. And I knew that in terms of tidying my home, that could decrease in priority a little bit. That was my honest way of looking at things right now.
片付けをキープ
So, of course, how did this look like in practice is that, of course, I would love to keep a tidy home and maintain it that way all the time, but sometimes I have to prioritize sleep, of course, and I did so.
I love that, Marie. And I think that there's a chorus of moms supporting that statement. And I so appreciate your honesty and authenticity in that. And I love what you said, that it's what's most important to me right now. Right. And I talk a lot about this, women that I speak with amongst our community, that life ebbs and flows, right? What your priorities might be today could look really different 18 to 24 months right now, and everybody has their own path. And so I think you just have to really figure out in this moment right now what is most important to me, and let that guide you.
そうなんです。なので、 表面的にはもちろん
Of course, I always thought about how our tidying method can bring joy into our life, but not just on a superficial level. But what's fundamental in my tidying method is that tidying a home is not just doing that on a superficial level, but asking yourself what brings joy into your life by doing so. So it's actually about figuring out the priorities in your life that brings you the most joy, most happiness in your life. And that is the core and heart of my tidying method. So when I say things like this, recently a lot of people come up to me and said, I heard you quit tidying or you've given up on tidying, but not at all. So the core, the heart, I'm always implementing the core and the heart of my tidying method. That hasn't changed at all.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. That really resonates. Well, switching gears a little, Marie, your newest book, Kurashi at Home, How to Organize Your Space and Achieve the Ideal Life, dives into finding gratitude in everyday life. Can you explain to our audience the concept of Kurashi and how it can be connected to one's life?
はい、暮らしっていうのは、日本語でいうところのライフスタイル。
So kurashi in Japanese generally defines in Japanese to lifestyle, but it's not just about style, but what's most important is it signifies the way you spend time every day and how you spend time in a way that brings the most happiness and joy to not only yourself, but the community around you.
今はちょっと仕事に集中したい時期だな。
And what I love about this concept is that not only it allows you to set priorities about what's most important to you right now, but it also allows you to be more conscious about and aware about how you're spending time. And this really, I think, helps bring more peace into your life and become more aware of how much support we are getting from the people in our lives and the things in our lives.
It's such a beautiful concept. It really is. And it's one that speaks to me deeply as I came to a realization myself last year after over 6 years of intensely building a company, scaling a business, having 3 children, how I was spending my time. I knew that it was unsustainable. And I needed to get my priorities, back in check. I was spending so much time working, and often when I was spending time with my children, I was often distracted by the noise of whatever was in my ear from that day, and it was very hard for me to really focus and be in the present. And so I made the decision, with the support of my team, to take some time off over the summer to recalibrate and focus on restoring my mental health. And a big piece of that was building a playroom for me and my 3 children, where we could really spend time, and time stops when I walk through that door, and I enter their world, and it is the most special time for me of the day when I fully immerse myself in our family, and just being there for these special moments. And whenever things feel a bit off kilter, going in there and being physically in that space reminds me of my priorities, which sounds kind of silly as I say it, but it's really just evokes this emotional connection with me. So Marie, for others maybe who joining, I'm curious your tips. How can organizing, creating those spaces that are very special, lead to, better, higher quality family time?
で、それをこう実践
And of course, when you think about how you want to create space for your family and yourself and put it into practice, your house becomes a home, right? It becomes a safe space.
こう行動していって、
So just as you were saying, Allison, how you made a playroom for your children and for your family, this is about physically changing your environment to reflect your priorities. You can change your space to a very original, meaningful place.
これ私が、
And when you have a space that sparks joy for you, it becomes reflected in the conversations that you have with your family, the way you spend time with them. This allows us to be more grateful of the home that we do have. And this gratitude really shapes the way we spend every hour, every day in our home. And a happy life is composed of these every day, every hour that we spend. And it allows us to be more conscious of the way that we are spending each moment in our home. And that's what I believe.
I love that. I love that. And especially, I think, as so many of us spent so much more time at home, working, living from home, just growing in importance, that we find, as you said, it shapes so much of our mood, our energy, and having, whether it be that photograph that sparks memories or that family antique, it's just those details are so meaningful. Thank you for that. Marie, two meaningful concepts of kurashi in your book are give yourself time and hold space for what matters. Both just such beautiful concepts. I was hoping that you would be able to briefly just explain a little bit what those concepts mean to you and talk about how moms in our community could start to incorporate those concepts into their everyday life.
だからこそ、私が大事だなっていうふうに思っているのが、
So, the first concept of giving yourself time. I know how busy we can be every day. There are so many demands on our lives, and it's easy to become overwhelmed. And I know how it feels when you feel like you're just reacting to all the demands. I myself know how that feels very well. And what I try to do in these situations is that when you set a daily schedule, I prioritize the time I spend for myself. I carve that space out first. For me, even just to take some time out of my life to have tea time for myself, that leads to me feeling like I've had a satisfying day. So I make that a priority. And the busier I am, or the more packed my schedule is, the more I work hard to keep that time for myself.
というふうに、
So no matter how small it is or how short of a time it actually needs, if it's something that gives you satisfaction and fulfills your heart, I prioritize that. And after I carve out space for that to spend that time, then I can move on to other priorities that I have, whether it be work or family. And I think that really allows me to maintain that balance within myself.
That's great advice. I think we have such a tendency as mothers to put our own needs last. But I think something the last year has taught me is by investing that time for yourself, it really pays dividends for your family and your work and you just being a fuller person. For me, Marie, it's been finding time of solitude, taking a daily walk as a really great way to get that time where I can just be alone with my thoughts and, just kind of blocking out the rest of the noise. And I believe that's so powerful. And often it doesn't come naturally to us as mothers. We really have to be very intentional about it.
結局は自分が
Yes, absolutely. It doesn't matter how short amount of a time it takes, but by taking care of yourself first, you are able to take care of your family and the rest of the community and so on. I think it's an extremely important and effective thing to do for yourself.
Absolutely.
それでも子育てをしてるね。それでも
And even on those days when you can't carve out that time for yourself, it's okay. It's very important to remember to forgive yourself, to give yourself peace in your heart, that it's okay when some days you just end up taking care of other things and other people, and that's how your day it finishes. And to remind yourself that that's okay. It's all about balance. But just tell yourself tomorrow, maybe I'll be able to set some time for myself. And just to always remember to have that grace and forgiveness in your heart for yourself as well.
Yes. Grace is so key, so key. Marie, switching gears just a little bit, one of the essential tips from your book, Kurashi at Home, is let go of constraints. You talk about how we are often our own worst enemies when setting and pursuing our goals. What do you mean by that? And how can we as moms work toward overcoming that and not being our own worst enemies?
考え方っていうのが、どうしても変える状況になっ
When
て
you
しまう
become a mother, you face a lot of needs to adjust your life in so many different ways. And as for my personally, when I became a mother, I realized that I had so many rules for myself. Of course, my work was in tidying, so of course it was obvious that my home had to be tidy and tidy at all times. And in this way, I was restricting myself to the rules that I had set up for myself. And I think that's very similar to a lot of instinct that we have as a mother to be a good mother. And we suffer and we harm ourselves in so many ways because there's a gap between our ideals and how we are realistically every day. And I think I mentioned this before, but just the idea of putting things back after you use them. This was something simple and fundamental that I used to be able to do, and I couldn't. There was a time when I couldn't, and it's really, I suffered because of that.
いろんな場所に一時置きのカゴを置くようになったっていうのが
And
私の
the way that I alleviated this problem was that I came up with the idea of putting all these baskets around so that it can be a temporary holding space for all of my things that I don't have the time or the leisure to put things back yet. So in this way, I was implementing newer, flexible rules for myself that kind of lightens the load of my heart.
なので、とにかく大切な
So I think what's important is this idea that to be conscious of what a life that sparks joy for you looks like for you, but also be conscious of the fact that this can change. Your ideal life, a life that sparks joy for you can change. And once you feel yourself being restricted by your older rules, try letting go of them first and see if there are new rules that feel more authentic to you. And I think that opens yourself up to this idea of change and that life that sparks joy can always change and evolve.
I love that. It's such a powerful analogy of what once was putting it away, the baskets in this new chapter of life. And as life evolves, so must we in the systems and our approaches, and allowing ourselves that grace, as you said, Marie, to just show up and do our best. And, you know, many of us are just doing our very best every day. And that is an accomplishment. And I always say mothers are the hardest working people in the world, right? And give yourself credit for all of those things that you do that perhaps no one else sees. But the work that you're doing, raising the next generation, it is so critically important. So remember that accomplishments come in many forms.
いや、本当におっしゃる通りです。
Exactly as you say. I can't agree more.
Oh, thank you, Marie. Well, I'll close us out with just a couple of last parting questions and thoughts. Marie, you've been named by Time Magazine one of the most influential people in the world. You've had best-selling books, Netflix series. You're now a mother of 3. You're constantly, you know, evolving your business, your family. So what's next? What's next for you? What are you excited about right now?
自分が母親になった
Rather than something specific, what I'm focused on right now and as a mother is to really be, I think it's a time for me to be more listening to the specific issues that other people have with tidying and to really absorb and I want everybody to share what sort of issues they encounter as they go on their tidying journey. And I really want to listen to them and sort of create a space for us to share those.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we look forward to seeing what those interviews and research can yield for all of us in the years to come. Very, very exciting.
はい、もうとても楽しみです。
Yes, I myself am looking forward to it.
Yes. Well, Marie, would love to close us out. At the Mom Project, we talk a lot about gratitude. And I know that gratitude is so important to you and your approach as well. So for those in our community, what advice would you give each of us to find gratitude in our everyday lives?
今日はこういうこと例えば今日は
So I think what I recommend and what I want everybody to remember is that things to be grateful for are all around us in our lives. And what I really recommend is before you go to sleep, take a moment to list all the things that you're grateful for in your life. And they may not be something that most people think about. What I think about when I think about what I'm grateful for in my life is being able to send my children to school, having a warm bed, having the clothes on my body that keeps me warm. And when I put away my accessories, I thank them for keeping me decorated and looking nice. And when you approach all of the details and all the small things in our life with gratitude, you will come to realize that there are so many things to be grateful for in our lives.
It's so true. That's so well said. And what a powerful parting thought to leave us with, Marie. On behalf of the Mom Project team, our broader community of members amongst us here today, our customers, thank you so much for being here, Marie. I speak for everyone when I say what a role model you are. The way that you lead, the way you talk about your life, your business, your family with such authenticity and candor. It's just really incredible. And so thank you. Thank you for being such an amazing person and inspiration to us. And I really look forward to continuing conversations with you, Marie. Just really grateful to have you here today and appreciate your time so much.
今日は本当にありがとうございました。私もアリサさ
I
んとお
am
話し
so
でき
honored
て
and
とて
so
も嬉しか
happy
っ
to
た
have
で
been
す。
able to
で、本当
connect
に
with you,
この
Allison, and your
この
community
コミュニ
today.
ティくだ
And
さ
I
って
know
くださっ
that
た
this
子
community
供は
that I
マ
was
マと
listening
か
in
保護者
today is full
た
of
ちが
mothers
い
and
て、
caregivers.
す
And
ごい
I
素敵なコ
just
ミュ
know
ニ
that
ティだ
it's
なっ
such a
ていうふうに
wonderful
思っています。
community,
応
and
援
you
してい
have my
ます。
full support always.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that means the world. Thank you so much. Until next time.
Yes. Thank you so much.